got my cohorts with me here on the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We've got Zane Paisley, independent wrestler from North Carolina, as a part of our panel as well. The Morning Star Will Huckabee is also here with us.
Will Huckabee.
Yep, that's my real name.
Excellent. That's awesome. Guys, thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's a great pleasure having you on. Let's talk about, I guess I want to ask you the first question, and that is, where have you not wrestled?
Oh, I've never wrestled in the UK. Well,
Really?
I mean, I kind of have, I guess, because I wrestled in Ireland, which I guess is part of the United Kingdom.
It is?
But I never wrestled in, actually, Britain. And that's one of the places where I've always wanted to wrestle. I haven't wrestled in Australia, China. There's a lot of places I haven't wrestled. Although I've got India, in my sights, man. Probably, I'm guessing within the next 2 years, I'll be hitting India at some point.
Very cool. I just when I look at your resume and all the federations you've competed in, and just you've been all over the place, and talking about different wrestling from different areas of the world. I mean, you've been in Japan, you've been into Mexico. We've heard from several guests in the past talk about what they felt with the differences, but could you see just clear differences between Japanese wrestling to Mexican wrestling to what we do over here?
Oh my God, it's so night and day. It's so different that it's almost one of those things that you kind of can't explain. You almost have to experience. I mean, before I went and wrestled in Japan, I was a huge fan of Japanese wrestling, and I watched and I heard the golf clap. But until you're actually there and you experience the golf clap that the Japanese kind of give you, you just don't get it. The Japanese fans look at it so different. I was actually watching a match the other day with somebody, and they said, "Man, look at the fans. They're just staring so intently at the ring, and they're not saying shit." And I'm like, "Yeah, because they might miss something. They don't want to be talking to their friend or yelling at the quote unquote heel. They don't want to be doing that because then they might miss part of the match, And I used to wonder, since they kind of view it like sport, and that's how they, don't they get the internet? Don't they understand that don't they see WWE? Don't they see what's happening? And it's weird because there's this part of Japan where they will go to an American event like WWE and they will act like American fans. But as far as when they go to a Japanese product, they turn back into those very polite, humble sports fans. So yeah, man, it's very different. And in Mexico was insane. I mean, I've never in the States had a chicken thrown at me. And in Mexico I had an entire chicken thrown at me. And I just, dude, it blew me away. And I'll tell you, it was amazing. It was cooked, and it hit me. I was doing the La Migra gimmick, and it hit me in the chest, and I thought, holy Christ. At first I thought I might have been shot, because I just saw pieces of flesh flying, and something hit me, and I hear sometimes that right when you get shot, it doesn't hurt at first, and I just thought, what the, and I looked down, and I see this chicken. And I picked it up, and it was nice and warm, and I took a couple bites of it and threw it back at him. But, I had an old man chase me with a cup of tea, and that just doesn't happen that often in the States anymore,
No, it doesn't. When you were over in Japan, how intimidating is that when you're working a match? A wrestler needs to get the feel of the crowd to understand how his performance is. And you don't hear anything. You don't hear any clapping. You don't hear anything. How intimidating, Michael, is that to wrestle and not if you're even getting over?
It is, at times, but they let you know by the claps and by the pops that they give you. They let you know whether you got them or not. What really sucks is when you're doing stuff where you kind of expect them to be a little quiet, and then you go into something amazing, and they're sitting on their hands. That's when you go, oh, Christ, what am I going to do now? And, it's funny, in the country towns, I learned right away a lot of the very out-of-the-way country towns. I learned keep it simple, stupid. Don't do confusing, fantastic moves and high spots. They like the simple stuff a lot better. They're just, I don't know if they don't watch TV or what it is, but I learned to really bring it down in a lot of the country towns because they just preferred more of that climb up on the second rope and punch the guy in the head 10 times. You know,
they like the storytelling, right?
Right. The moves didn't amaze them as much as the good story. Whereas in, Tokyo and Osaka, the moves, really exploded them as well as the story. But in the country towns, the moves really didn't make them like all that impressed. It was really interesting.
Well, Michael, let's kick it over to the Morning Star, Will Huckabee. I know he's got some questions for you since he's got some inside knowledge of the business.
Right on, Will.
I hate when you put me on the spot like that. First of all, Mr. Modest, it's great talking to you.
Oh, man, it's
I want to
talking
get some of the backstory. I want to get some of the backstory and stuff before we start talking about a lot of your more recent escapades. Of course, you're most famous for being on Beyond the Mat.
Right.
And we all know that. You had a tryout match with WWE. And of course, as a wrestling fan, I've seen that match. But I also saw another match you had against Donovan Morgan, which never made it to the movie. And in my opinion, that match was better than the one they actually put in the movie.
Right.
What do you feel is the reason why they didn't actually give you a developmental contract or a developmental deal?
I'll tell you guys a funny story. By that time, I had literally had probably 30 tryouts with WWE. And the first one I ever had was terrible. I wasn't in shape like I should have been. I was 18 years old, and, my outfit kind of sucked. Like, just everything was not there. And all of a sudden, I've got a tryout. And a WWE jobber named Jerry Monty had hooked that up with Chief Jay Strongbow. And so all of a sudden, I had this tryout. It was okay, but I realized right away, I was like, man, I'm just not there at all, So I took it more seriously, and I had another, 30 tryouts with them. By the time Beyond the Mat came about, I was actually a little smart to the business, and I kind of already had accepted the fact that WWE knew of me for quite a long time, and they just weren't interested. I didn't have the look. I didn't fit a storyline, whatever it was at the time. But I just kind of had accepted the fact that probably wasn't going to be me, and that, Japan was my new goal, and WCW was my goal. And so when Barry actually approached me about that, I actually played hardball. And I said, no, I'm not, I don't want to do that. And he said, well, we've been filming for the thing, and that's the whole point. You're supposed to get a WWE tryout. And I was like, well, I need 10 minutes. Every time I go in there, they tell me I'm going to get 10, and, I'm opener, and they tell me I'm going to get 10, and they cut it to 2. And then they go, oh, you kid, you just didn't get them. Well, yeah, I'm 5'10", with my boots on. I'm 5'10", and I'm not 230 pounds of steroided muscle. I'm doing what I can, to pop them off just the way I look, but I need a minute to actually do something. So I just told him I need 10 minutes. So he had guaranteed me, Barry Blaustein had guaranteed me 10 minutes. And he told me that he had cleared it with WWE and that I had 10 minutes. So during that tryout match, me and Tony go out there, for the Donovan. That match with Donovan was probably number 15 tryout. So then I go in there with Tony Jones for Beyond the Mat, and just like normal, 1 minute into it, go home. The referee's like, go home. I mean, literally 1 minute, man. The ref's like, go home. And I looked at him and I said, fuck you. And he said, go home. And I said, fuck off. And Tony goes, dude, what are we going to do? And I said, we're going to keep fucking wrestling. They told me 10 fucking minutes. I'm taking 10. Fuck them. Because I was okay that I wasn't getting fucking hired. Who gives a fuck? Everything
you have to lose, right?
Well, and here's the thing, man. Everything that you achieve in life, haven't you always found that it's not quite the way you imagined it to be? Well, I had a lot of friends that, guys that I had trained with, Spike Dudley, Crash, et cetera, et cetera. I had a lot of guys who had experience in there. Friends of mine, Too Cold Scorpio, Leon White, Vader. I knew people that had been there. So I already knew that once you get there, that's when the real work starts. That's when the politics, that's when all the BS, that's when it becomes a real job, and so like, I just didn't really care at that point. I was like, man, I've had a lot of tryouts with you guys, and, if you're not that interested in me, that's okay. I'm not that interested in you either. I'll just do what I got to do. So I just told the referee, I was like, no. And I swear at one point I could hear Bruce yelling from the earpiece. I could hear Bruce from the gorilla room yelling, tell him to go home. That motherfucker go home. Hey, you tell him to go home. And the rest telling him, I'm telling him. He just says no. He says no. And here was my thinking. If you want me to stop the match early, send a bunch of WWE superstars out to stop it. I'll start beating the fuck out of them as quick as I can. Of course, they'll beat me up in the end, but wow, what an angle. They'll be forced to hire me now. And so I was just like, screw it, I don't care. I'm going to take my 10. So we took the 10, and then we ended up, popping them, and it was a good match. And here's the thing. I kind of knew that what Barry, this is my opinion, and I like Barry, man. Me and Barry are still friends to this day. Barry Blessing's the director of the film. But I kind of knew at that time, I felt that Barry was trying to paint me as the guy that wasn't good enough to make it. He was trying to paint me as the guy, 1 minute into the match, and WWE officials said, it just wasn't going right, so they pulled the plug. Oh, poor Mike Modest, poor Tony Jones. They just don't have it. And because I took my 10, and because I didn't care, I showed the world that I had it. You got Jim Ross, you got Jim Cornette popping, you got Vince McMahon popping. So as far as I'm concerned, I showed the world. Me and Tony accomplished what we wanted to accomplish that night. So it's one of my crowning moments in my whole life, honestly.
That's awesome.
So yeah, the Donovan match was a great match, but they weren't interested in me or Donovan at that time. But then Vic Grimes and Crash got a tryout soon after that. They ended up getting signed. Spike got signed from ECW. He had gone to ECW prior, and then when WWE bought them, that's when Spike went over.
So after the Beyond the Mat DVD comes out and stuff, how soon after that movie was released did your phone start blowing up?
It wasn't like my phone blew up or nothing. I don't know. Mike Modest is kind of like not just a gimmick. Like it was a nickname given to me by the boys. So I didn't really even recognize it as that big of a thing. I thought it was kind of really cool that I got to go see myself at a movie theater. But I really didn't know that, it was going to garnish any kind of real, publicity for me or anything like that. But I'd say more than anything, just my indie rep and the internet was the biggest thing that made the difference in my career, because without the internet, the whole Beyond the Mat thing wouldn't have been spread like it did. But because Beyond Mat, the internet was kind of gaining power at that time as well, that's why it spread so far. But before that, before the internet, and I didn't really understand it. I just thought, well, it'll be a local movie. It was shown, in California where I was. It was shown in one theater within a 2-hour, drive or something like that. I was living in Hayward, and it was in Sacramento. So I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But man, the internet, and then that popped, and it just kind of snowballed. And so yeah, I did get a lot of calls after that.
Let's kick on over to Zane Paisley. Zane, what do you got for Mike Modest?
Well, you had mentioned Crash Holly a few times, and I know you guys had an amazing series of matches together. What is your fondest memory of him as we mark? He passed away a little over 10 years ago. What were some of the great memories of him?
Well, I'll tell you, man, I have so many good memories of him. He was one of those guys. He had a lot of nicknames and a lot of gimmicks and stuff. But in APW, he was Aaron O'Grady, but his name was Mike Lockwood, was his real name. And I had met Mike, when I was like 16 years old, and he was wrestling for Woody Farmer, and I was just starting to go around Jerry's place. And we were friends for a long, long time. And just one of my very best friends. But it's funny when people always ask me, like, one of my fondest memories. It's kind of weird. It's a weird memory, but it really kind of sums up his personality. He was kind of a really nutty guy. He was a little bit like a leprechaun, you know. He really was. And so one night, me and him were down in a bottle of Southern Comfort, and we're in the APW garage. I lived in the little apartment up above the garage, and so we're pounding the Southern Comfort. That was his drink at the time, and at some point, for some reason, he thought it'd be a great idea to take off his clothes, and it was just me and him. Okay, and now I don't want you to think this was a gay thing, because it wasn't a gay thing at all. Okay, it made perfect sense at the time in his mind, and it had nothing to do with being gay. He takes off all of his clothes. He climbs over the balcony, you know, that you can see in the movie Beyond the Mat. He climbs over that balcony, and he jumps to the where the ring was normally at, but the ring was in a ring truck, because we had finished the show, and so we backed the ring truck into the garage. So he jumped from the balcony to the top of the ring truck, and then he started taking bumps on the ring truck naked, and he was saying it was MPW, Naked Pro Wrestling. And then he said, "It's time to take it public." And he said, the stock's coming like hotcakes. Time to take it public. And he jumped off of the truck like a leprechaun. And, you know, because jumping like that off the top of a rental truck, to me, you know, that wouldn't have been a good idea even in my younger days. And but he jumped right off it and went and opened the garage door, and he ran out into the street. Now, this is the weirdest part of the thing, is that it was probably like 2:30 in the morning, okay, 3 o'clock in the morning, really late. And it's an industrial area, okay? He runs out of the garage, and I'm running down going, "Oh, man, knock it off. You know, stop this. I'm trying to get him back in the garage." He runs out, and there's 3 old ladies getting into a car. Now, it's bizarre, first of all, that 3 old ladies are getting into a car in an industrial area at 3 o'clock in the morning. But then how bizarre for them to this naked guy come running out of a garage and then start bumping in this lawn that was right next to him, you know? So, yeah, that's like, I don't know, that's one of my favorite memories of the guy. It was just funny. I mean, I almost pissed my pants. I was laughing so hard, you know? And that's kind of how he was. He's one of those guys, man, he'd do anything to make his friends laugh, you know? Consummate class clown.